I never expected a single voicemail to unravel my entire world. My father's message sat there for 3 hours before I finally noticed it, buried under meeting notifications and client calls. His voice trembled in a way I'd never heard before. "Lila, honey, I need to talk to you. It's about your sister. Things aren't. Just call me back when you can. Please." My name is Lila, and until that message, I thought I'd made peace with being the responsible daughter. The boring one. The one who didn't need constant bailouts or midnight rescue missions. But something in Dad's voice sent ice through my veins. I was halfway through another mindless quarterly report when the message played. My office suddenly felt too small, the Manhattan skyline outside my window a mere backdrop to the storm brewing in my head. I tried calling him back immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. 3 times. "Everything okay?" Grant poked his head into my office, coffee in hand. My boyfriend of 2 years had an uncanny ability to sense when something was off. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's Dad," I said, already packing my laptop. "Something's wrong. He left this weird message about Ivy, and now he's not picking up." Grant's expression shifted. He knew all about my younger sister's drama, the endless string of emergencies that always seemed to end with our parents opening their checkbook. "Want me to drive you out there?" I shook my head. "I need to do this alone. Besides, someone has to explain to Johnson why his financial analyst disappeared in the middle of the day." The drive to my parents' house in Connecticut felt endless. Every scenario played through my mind, each worse than the last. Had Ivy finally crossed a line? Was she in trouble with the wrong people? Or was this just another elaborate scheme to get more money? I pulled into their driveway just as the sun was setting. The house looked the same as always. Pristine colonial, perfect landscaping, my mother's prized roses blooming along the walkway. But something felt off. There was an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway, sleek, expensive, definitely new. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open. There stood Ivy, looking immaculate as always in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of a man I didn't recognize, lounging on our parents' couch like he owned the place. "Lila." Ivy's surprise seemed genuine, but there was something else in her expression. Fear? Guilt? "What are you doing here?" "Dad called me," I said, watching her face carefully. "Where is he?" "Oh, that." She waved dismissively, but her hand shook slightly. "He's probably in his study. You know how he gets about his little projects." "Mason, honey, could you grab us some wine?" The man from the couch, Mason, apparently sauntered past us toward the kitchen. He gave me a once-over that made my skin crawl. "Who's Mason?" I asked quietly. Ivy's smile brightened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "My new boyfriend. He's been staying here while we figure out our next move. Mom and Dad love him." Something in the way she said it set off alarm bells. I stepped past her into the house, noting the subtle changes. New artwork on the walls. Expensive-looking electronics. Shopping bags from luxury brands scattered near the stairs. "Where's Mom?" I asked, heading toward Dad's study. "Spa weekend with her friends. She'll be devastated she missed you." I reached for the study door, but Ivy grabbed my arm. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my skin. "Lila, wait," she whispered urgently. "Before you go in there, there's something you should know." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the perfect makeup and confident smile, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Desperation. "What have you done, Ivy?" The study door creaked open behind us before she could answer. Dad stood there, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen him. His hands clutched a stack of papers that trembled slightly. "Lila," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk about the family trust." Dad's study had always been a sanctuary of order and calm. Now, papers littered every surface, and the air felt thick with tension. He gestured for me to sit, but I remained standing, my eyes fixed on the documents in his trembling hands. "The family trust is empty," he said quietly. "Every penny gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. That trust was meant for our futures, for Ella's education. "How?" "Your sister had access," he continued, spreading papers across his desk. "At first, it was small withdrawals. Emergency expenses," she said. "Then larger ones. Investment opportunities. business ventures. I caught glimpses of bank statements, transfer records, all with Ivy's elegant signature. The amounts made my head spin. Where's the money now? Ask your sister's boyfriend. Dad's voice hardened. Mason's been managing their investments. Some cryptocurrency scheme, real estate deals that never materialized. Your mother doesn't know yet. A child's laughter drifted through the window. I moved to look out, spotting Ella playing in the backyard. She was chasing butterflies, her dark curls bouncing in the sunlight. Mason stood nearby, typing furiously on his phone. What about Ella's college fund? I asked, already knowing the answer. Gone too. The door creaked open behind us. Ivy stood there, her perfect composure cracking slightly at the edges. It's not what you think, Lila. Mason has connections. The investments just need time to mature. Stop. My voice came out sharper than intended. Just stop lying. I'm not lying. Ivy's eyes filled with tears. Mason knows what he's doing. Tell them, honey. Mason appeared in the doorway, all smooth confidence and practiced charm. Walter, I understand your concerns, but these kinds of investments take time. We're talking serious returns here. Show me the paperwork, I interrupted. Both Mason and Ivy flinched. The investment contracts, the property deeds, anything. Those documents are confidential. Mason started, but Dad cut him off. Get out of my house. His voice was quiet but firm. Now. Mason's charm vanished instantly. You can't do that. Ivy and I have rights. Rights. I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. To what? The money you stole. Lila, please. Ivy grabbed my arm. You don't understand. We had plans. Good plans. If you just listen. The front door slammed, making us all jump. Mom's voice rang through the house. I'm home early. The spa was fully booked. Can you believe it? Ivy's grip on my arm tightened painfully. Please don't tell her. Not yet. Let me fix this. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and perfect makeup, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. Raw, desperate fear. Mom appeared in the doorway, her face brightening at the sight of me. Lila, what a wonderful surprise. Then she noticed the tension in the room, the papers scattered across Dad's desk. Her smile faltered. What's going on? Before anyone could respond, Ella's cry pierced the air. Through the window, I saw her sprawled on the grass, tears streaming down her face. Mason was nowhere in sight. I broke free from Ivy's grip and rushed outside. By the time I reached Ella, she was sitting up, holding her scraped knee. Uncle Mason promised to catch me, she sniffled. But he left. I scooped her up, my niece's small arms wrapping around my neck. Over her shoulder, I watched Mason's expensive car speed down the driveway, taking what was left of our family's savings with it. Back inside, I could hear Mom's voice rising in disbelief, Ivy's sobs, Dad's attempts to calm them both. Ella hiccuped against my shoulder, her tears soaking into my blouse. Is Mommy in trouble? She whispered. I held her tighter, watching the chaos unfold through the window. Mom had collapsed into a chair, her face ashen. Ivy was on her knees beside her, mascara running down her cheeks. Dad stood between them, looking lost. Everything's going to be okay? I lied, knowing things would get much worse before they got better. I promise. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Grant. How bad is it? I didn't respond. How could I explain that this was just the beginning? The next morning, I woke up in my old bedroom to the sound of Mom crying. I'd stayed overnight to help sort through the financial mess, but nothing prepared me for what I found in Dad's office at dawn. Mom sat at his desk, surrounded by even more paperwork than yesterday. Credit card statements, loan documents, second mortgages I never knew existed. Dad stood by the window, looking years older than he had just hours ago. The house, Mom whispered, her voice breaking. She remortgaged the house. I grabbed the nearest document. There was Ivy's flowing signature, right next to Mom's perfect imitation of it. My stomach lurched. She forged your signature? No, Mom's shoulders slumped. I signed. She said it was for Ella's future. A business opportunity that would set them up for life. The magnitude of the deception hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about the trust fund anymore. This was systematic destruction of our family's entire financial foundation. Where is she? I asked. Still sleeping, Dad said quietly. She took some pills last night. Said she couldn't handle the stress. I fought back a bitter laugh. The stress she couldn't handle was of her own making. My phone buzzed, a text from Grant. Found something about Mason. Call me ASAP. Before I could step out to call him, Ivy appeared in the doorway. She looked terrible. Hair tangled, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes as yesterday. I can't explain, she started, but Mom cut her off. Explain what, Ivy? How you convinced me to risk our home. How you let that man. Mason loves me. Ivy's voice cracked. He wouldn't just leave. Something must have happened. Something did happen, I said, holding up my phone. Grant found his real name. It's not Mason Hale, it's Marcus Henderson. He's done this before. The color drained from Ivy's face. What? 3 other families in the past 2 years. He finds vulnerable women with access to family money, convinces them to invest in his schemes, then disappears. Ivy swayed on her feet. No, that's not. He loves me. He loves Ella. Where is Ella? I suddenly realized I hadn't heard my niece this morning. In her room. Sleeping. Ivy's eyes darted away from mine. Something in her tone sent me running up the stairs. Ella's room was empty. Her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she never slept without, lay on the perfectly made bed. Ivy. My scream brought everyone running. Where is she? Mason said. He said if anything went wrong, he'd take her somewhere safe. Ivy's words tumbled out between sobs. Just until things calmed down. He left a note. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. You let him take your daughter? He's her father. Ivy screamed back. He wouldn't hurt her. He's not her father. Dad's quiet voice cut through the chaos. We all turned to stare at him. Ivy, we've never said anything, but we know. Ella was born before you even met Mason. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sank to the floor, her legs giving out. Ivy stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. My phone buzzed again. Grant had sent an address, a storage facility on the outskirts of town. Mason rented a unit there last week, his message read. Paid cash. I was halfway down the stairs before anyone could react. Call the police, I shouted over my shoulder. Tell them everything. Lila, wait. Ivy ran after me, grabbing my arm. Please, let me come with you. She's my daughter. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the mess and tears, I saw something new. Determination. Maybe even courage. Fine, I said, already heading for my car. But when this is over, we're going to have a very long talk about who Ella's real father is. Ivy flinched but followed me. As we pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of our parents in the doorway. Mom was on the phone, presumably with the police. Dad held her close, his free hand pressed against the door frame of the house we might soon lose. I'm sorry, Ivy whispered beside me. I never meant for any of this to happen. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Save it. Right now, all that matters is finding Ella and making Mason pay for everything he'd done to our family. The storage facility loomed ahead, a maze of identical metal doors under the harsh morning sun. Grant was already there, pacing by his car. One look at his face told me this wasn't going to be good. Unit 247, he said, falling into step beside us. But Lila, there's something else. Mason's real identity? It gets worse. Before he could continue, we heard Ella's voice clear, frightened, coming from somewhere in the maze of storage units. Ivy broke into a run, and I sprinted after her, my heart pounding against my ribs. We found the unit, its door slightly ajar. Inside, Ella sat on a folding chair, clutching her stuffed rabbit. A laptop on a table beside her played a recording of her voice on loop. No, Mason. No real ella. Just a trap. Well. Mason's voice came from behind us. The whole rescue party arrived right on schedule. We spun around. He stood blocking the exit, looking nothing like the polished boyfriend who'd charmed our parents. His designer clothes were gone, replaced by practical dark clothing. The charm had vanished too, leaving something cold and calculated in its place. Where is she? Ivy's voice shook. Safe. For now. He pulled out his phone, showing us a live video feed of Ella sleeping in what looked like a motel room. Insurance, you might say. Grant stepped forward, but Mason raised a warning hand. Careful. One call, and my partner moves her somewhere you'll never find. Partner? I caught Grant's eye. This was the something worse he'd try to tell me. You really should have dug deeper into your family history, Lila. Mason's smile turned cruel. Asked your mother about her first marriage. About the money she inherited when her first husband died so tragically. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Mom's occasional mysterious phone calls. Her insistence on handling certain financial matters personally. The way she'd supported Ivy's relationship with Mason despite Dad's concerns. Mom knows you, I said. It wasn't a question. Knew my father, actually. Before she married yours. Mason leaned against the doorframe, casual as if discussing the weather. She's been quite helpful, making sure Ivy trusted me. Keeping Walter in the dark about certain arrangements. Beside me, Ivy made a sound like she'd been struck. Mom. Helped you. Why do you think she signed those papers so easily? Mason laughed. Though I'll admit, she thought this was just about money. She has no idea about Ella. Speaking of which, he held up his phone again. The video feed had changed. Ella was awake now, crying for her mother. Here's the deal. The trust fund money is gone, but we all know there's more. Offshore accounts. Property in the Caymans. Your mother's been quite busy over the years. I don't know anything about. I started, but he cut me off. No, but she does. And now you have motivation to help me get it. Let's call this generational justice. A police siren wailed in the distance. Mason's expression hardened. You have 24 hours. Get your mother to transfer everything to the accounts I'll send you, or Ella disappears permanently. He backed away, then added with a twisted smile, Oh, and Ivy? Maybe ask her about Ella's real father while you're at it. That's quite a story, too. He vanished around the corner. Grant ran after him but returned seconds later, shaking his head. He's gone. Car was waiting. Ivy had collapsed against the storage unit wall, her whole body shaking. Mom knew. All this time she knew. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number with banking details and a photo of Ella, tears streaming down her face as she held today's newspaper. We need to talk to Mom, I said, helping Ivy to her feet. Now. And say what? Ivy laughed bitterly. Hey Mom, remember your first husband's son? The one you've been helping steal from us. Grant touched my arm gently. Lila, there's more you need to know about your mother's first marriage. About how her husband really died. The sirens were getting closer. We had 24 hours to unravel decades of family secrets, face our mother's betrayal, and somehow save Ella. And something told me we'd only scratched the surface of how deep this conspiracy went. Let's go, I said, already moving. It's time to find out exactly who our mother really is. The drive home felt like moving through a nightmare. Every traffic light was a countdown to disaster, every second ticking away against Ella's chances. Mom and Dad were waiting in the living room when we arrived, their faces drawn with worry. The police are looking for Mason. Dad started, but Mom's sharp intake of breath stopped him. She knew. One look at her face and I could see it all, the guilt, the fear, and something else. Calculation. How long have you been planning this? I asked quietly. Mom's composure cracked for just a moment. Planning what? Don't. Ivy's voice was raw. Just don't. Mason told us everything. About your first husband. About helping him get close to us. Dad turned to Mom. Confusion etched across his face. Celeste. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Mom whispered. She reached for her purse, pulled out a sleek tablet. Richard, my first husband, he stole everything from me. When his son contacted me last year, said he could help me get it back. By stealing from your own daughters? My laugh sounded hollow, even to my ears. By putting your granddaughter in danger? Ella. Mom's face went pale. What about Ella? Grant stepped forward, laying printed documents on the coffee table. Mason has her. And he's demanding access to offshore accounts you apparently set up years ago. That's impossible, Mom said, but her hands were shaking. Those accounts were just insurance. No one knows about them except Richard's old partners, Dad finished. We all turned to look at him. I found some old papers last month. That's why I called you, Lila. I was trying to figure out how to tell you that your mother's first husband didn't die in an accident. He disappeared with millions, leaving her to take the fall for his investment fraud. Mom sank into her chair. I spent years rebuilding our reputation, protecting you girls from that scandal. When Mason said he could help me recover what Richard stole. So you helped him target Ivy? I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. Your own daughter? I didn't know about Ella, Mom repeated desperately. You have to believe me. I thought we could all get justice. My phone buzzed. Another photo of Ella, this time with a clock clearly visible. 20 hours left. Justice. Ivy laughed bitterly. Look what your justice got us, Mom. My daughter is missing, our family's broke, and for what? Revenge against a man who's probably dead. He's not dead. Grant's quiet voice cut through the tension. Richard Hale is very much alive. And according to my sources, he's in town. Mom's tablet slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. On its screen, I caught a glimpse of banking information, accounts holding millions. That's what this is really about, isn't it? I picked up the tablet. Not justice. Not revenge. Mason wants access to these accounts because his father's planning something bigger. We have to call the police, Dad said, reaching for his phone. No. Mom grabbed his arm. If Richard finds out I've talked, there are things you don't know. Things I've done. Another photo came through on my phone. Ella was crying harder now, and a bruise was visible on her arm. I don't care what you've done, I said, my voice steel. But you're going to help us fix this. Now. How? Mom whispered. I looked at the banking information on her tablet, then at Grant. Years of financial analysis had taught me to spot patterns and something about these transactions. We're going to give Mason exactly what he wants, I said slowly. Access to the accounts. But first, we're going to lay a trap. Call Richard. Tell him you're ready to talk. Lila, no, Grant warned. These people are dangerous. So am I. I met Mom's eyes. You wanted justice? Let's get it. But we do this my way. For Ella. Mom nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. For Ella. The clock on my phone showed 19 hours remaining. Time to find out just how far I'd go to save my niece, and whether our family could survive the truth that was about to come out. The cafe was nearly empty when Richard Hale walked in. He looked nothing like Mason, tall, elegant, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that only comes from decades of getting away with everything. Mom's hands shook as she raised her coffee cup. Celeste, he said warmly, sliding into the booth across from us. You look exactly the same. I watched Mom's facade crack slightly. Beside me, Grant tensed, his hand brushing against the recording device hidden under the table. Where's my granddaughter? Richard's smile never wavered. Where's my money? Mom countered. He laughed, the sound sending chills down my spine. Still direct. I always loved that about you. His eyes shifted to me. And this must be Lila. The smart one, according to Mason. Cut the small talk, I said. We know what you want. Do you? He pulled out his phone, showing us a new video of Ella. She was sleeping again, but something wasn't right. Her breathing looked shallow, irregular. What did you do to her? My voice cracked. Nothing permanent. Yet, Richard's expression hardened. The accounts, Celeste. All of them. Not just the ones Mason found. Mom went pale. I don't lie to me. His voice dropped dangerously low. You think I didn't know about Hong Kong? Singapore? You've been moving money for years, building your own little empire. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? My phone buzzed, a text from Ivy. Police found the motel. Empty. Blood on the sheets. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the table to steady myself, mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. We had a plan. The police were watching. Grant's hand gripped my knee under the table, warning me to stay calm. Time's running out, Richard continued pleasantly. For everyone. Mason tells me Ella's been asking for her mother. Shame if something happened before they could reunite. The transfers are ready, Mom whispered, sliding her tablet across the table. Everything. Just, please. Richard examined the screen, then smiled. Almost everything. He looked directly at me. Except the account in Grand Cayman. The one under Lila's name. The air left my lungs. Mom turned to me, confusion written across her face. What is he talking about? Oh, this is delicious. Richard leaned back, genuinely amused. She doesn't know, does she? You're perfect. Responsible daughter has been skimming from the family trust for years, building her own safety net, just like her mother taught her. Grant's hand withdrew from my knee. The betrayal in his eyes cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't like that, I started, but the words felt hollow. How could I explain the years of watching Ivy get everything while I played by the rules? The quiet rage that led me to create that account, feeding it slowly with diverted funds? Tick-tock, Richard sang, standing up. You have 1 hour to transfer everything. And Lila. His smile turned cruel. Mason says to tell you he found your other accounts too. The ones even your mother doesn't know about. He walked out, leaving devastation in his wake. Mom wouldn't look at me. Grant's silence spoke volumes. My phone buzzed again, another text from Ivy, following Mason. Think I know where they're keeping her. Don't tell Mom. Don't, Grant warned, reading over my shoulder. It's probably a trap. I don't have a choice. I stood up, my legs barely supporting me. Mom, transfer everything. Buy us time. Grant. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything later. There won't be a later, he said quietly. Not for us. I walked out of the cafe into the gathering darkness, my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. Everything I'd built, my relationship, my family's trust, my image as the responsible one, was falling apart. But none of that mattered now. Somewhere out there, my niece was dying. My sister was walking into a trap. And I had exactly 57 minutes to decide which secrets I was willing to sacrifice to save them. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. Like mother, like daughter. Come alone or they both die. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the night sky, its broken windows reflecting the city lights like shattered mirrors. Ivy's car sat empty in the parking lot, driver's door still open. My headlights caught something glinting on the pavement. Her phone. Screen cracked. I killed the engine and checked my watch. 20 minutes left. The warehouse door creaked open at my touch. Inside, emergency lights cast sickly green shadows across rusted machinery. Footsteps echoed somewhere above. Took you long enough. Mason's voice carried from the metal catwalk overhead. Did you bring it? I held up my laptop. Access to everything. Where are they? Show me first. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up account details. 6 accounts. Nearly 40 million total. All the passwords and authentication codes ready to transfer. A child's whimper echoed through the space. My head snapped up, catching movement in the shadows above. Interesting, Mason said, stepping into the light. But what about the 7th account? The one you opened the day Ella was born. My blood ran cold. Behind Mason, I could see Ivy now, held firmly by Richard. Ella wasn't with them. Where is she? My voice shook. Safe, Richard called down. For now. Unlike your sister here, who just couldn't stay away. Ivy struggled against his grip. Lila, don't. It's not about the money. They're using us too. Richard's hand clamped over her mouth. That's enough, dear. Mason, show her. Mason tossed something over the railing. It landed at my feet, a familiar leather portfolio. Dad's company letterhead peeked out from inside. Your father's been quite busy, Mason smiled. All those years helping your mother hide her fortune, he picked up some useful skills. Skills that certain organizations would pay handsomely to acquire. The pieces clicked together. You're using our accounts to launder money. Smart girl. Richard released Ivy, shoving her toward the stairs. But not smart enough. Your little secret account? It's been perfect for moving funds internationally. Small amounts, regular intervals, all looking legitimate thanks to your sterling reputation. Ivy stumbled down the metal steps, her face bloody. They killed him, she gasped. Ella's real father. He found out what they were doing and... A gunshot cracked through the air. Ivy screamed, clutching her arm. Blood seeped between her fingers. Last chance, Mason said. The final account. Now. My laptop felt heavy in my hands. Years of resentment, of playing it safe while Ivy took risks, had led to this moment. I'd created that account out of spite, fed it with stolen money out of some twisted sense of justice. Now it might get us all killed. Okay, I said quietly. You win. I set the laptop down, hands raised. Mason descended the stairs, gun trained on me. Behind him, Richard dragged Ivy to her feet. The authentication code, Mason demanded. I smiled. Check your phone. His brow furrowed. A second later, every emergency light in the building flashed red. Sirens wailed in the distance. What did you? The code triggered a failsafe, I said. Every transaction from the past year, every shell company, every hidden transfer, it's all being sent to the FBI right now. Richard's curse echoed through the warehouse. Mason lunged for me, but I was already moving. The gun went off, the shot going wide. Mom's at the motel. I told Ivy as chaos erupted around us. She found Ella. They're safe. Mason recovered, taking aim again. But Ivy was faster. She slammed into him, sending them both crashing into a stack of crates. The gun skittered across the floor. Richard's footsteps pounded overhead, racing for the back exit. Flashlights bounced off the walls as FBI agents swarmed in through every entrance. I grabbed Ivy's good arm, pulling her towards safety. I'm sorry, I whispered. For everything. She squeezed my hand, tears cutting through the blood on her face. Me too. Outside, red and blue lights painted the night. Mom stood by an ambulance, Ella wrapped safely in her arms. Grant was there too, talking to the agents. Our eyes met across the parking lot. He nodded once, and I knew somehow we'd find our way back from this. But first, we had a family to rebuild. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse parking lot, watching Mason and Richard being led away in handcuffs. The trial had been brutal, forcing every family secret into the harsh light of public scrutiny. But it was finally over. They'll be in prison for a long time, Grant said quietly beside me. We weren't back together. Not really, but we were talking again. Baby steps. Ivy emerged from the courthouse, her arm still in a sling. Ella skipped beside her, clutching her ever-present stuffed rabbit. They looked different now, both of them. Lighter somehow, despite everything they'd lost. Ice cream? Ella asked, tugging at my hand. Some things hadn't changed. Actually, Ivy said, we need to stop by the house first. Dad wants to show us something. The family home had survived, barely. Mom's careful financial planning had protected just enough to keep it, though the interior was mostly empty now. The artwork and luxury items were long gone, sold to pay restitution. Dad waited in his study, surrounded by boxes. Girls, he smiled, looking more like himself than he had in months. Help me with these. Inside each box were photos, documents, letters, pieces of our family history we'd never seen. I've been keeping these, Dad explained, waiting for the right time. He handed Ivy a worn envelope. Inside was a photograph of a young man in a military uniform. Ella's father, Dad said gently. James Mitchell. He worked at my company, discovered the money laundering scheme. He tried to stop it. Ivy's hands trembled as she traced the man's features, so similar to Ella's. Why didn't you tell me? He asked me not to. He was gathering evidence, trying to protect you both. When he disappeared, Dad's voice caught. I should have done more. You did what you could, I said, remembering the careful records Dad had kept. The quiet ways he'd tried to shield us while gathering evidence of his own. Mom appeared in the doorway, hesitating before entering. She looked older now, but somehow more real without the perfect facade she'd maintained for so long. I found this, she said, holding out a small notebook. In Richard's things after the arrest. It was a ledger, filled with dates and numbers. But in the margins were notes, observations about our family, about Ivy and me, stretching back years. Richard had been watching us, planning, long before Mason entered our lives. He was never going to stop, Mom whispered. Using us, hurting us. I thought I was protecting you all, but we all made mistakes, I said, thinking of my own secret account, now seized as evidence. We all thought we were doing the right thing. Ella climbed into my lap, flipping through one of the photo albums. Who's that? She asked, pointing to a picture of 2 little girls, Ivy and me covered in mud, laughing in the backyard. That's your mom and me, I smiled. Before things got complicated. Are they still complicated? Ivy caught my eye across the room. Something passed between us, understanding maybe. Or forgiveness. Getting simpler every day, she answered. Later, as we sorted through the remains of our past, Grant pulled me aside. Your father showed me something else, he said, handing me an envelope. He wanted you to have it when you were ready. Inside was a letter from James Mitchell, dated just days before his disappearance. He'd written about courage, about doing the right thing even when it cost you everything, about protecting those you love by telling them the truth. At the bottom was a postscript: watch over them, all of them. Sometimes the strongest families are built from broken pieces. I looked around the study at Mom and Dad, heads bent together over old photos, at Ivy, teaching Ella to make paper airplanes from blank ledger pages, at Grant, still here despite everything. We were different now. Stronger maybe, or at least more honest about our weaknesses. The money was gone, the secrets exposed, the carefully constructed images shattered. But as Ella's laughter echoed through the empty house, I realized something. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what was missing all along. Ready for that ice cream? I asked. Ella grabbed my hand, then Ivy's, pulling us toward the door, toward whatever came next. Together.